50,000 people used to live here. Now it's a ghost town. On April 26, 1986, a routine test at the Chernobyl power plant went horribly wrong, and two massive explosions blew the 1,000-ton roof off one of the plant's reactors, releasing 400 times more radiation than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. The worst nuclear disaster in history killed 2 workers in the explosions, and within months at least 28 more people were dead just by acute radiation exposure. Eventually, thousands of people would show signs of health defects, including cancer, just from the fallout. The radioactive cloud was deposited nearby as dust and debris, but was also carried by wind over to the Ukraine, Belarus, Russia, Scandinavia, and other parts of Europe too. Apart from the ever-unfolding human toll from the disaster, the Chernobyl accident has left behind a huge area of radiation-tainted land. A 770-mile wide Chernobyl exclusion zone around the site isn't considered safe for human habitation, and can't be used for logging or agriculture, due to the contaminated plants in the soil. The small town of Chernobyl is the closest occupied town just before the 10-kilometre exclusion zone, which is a short drive from Chernobyl, and where all the contaminated places and ghost towns such as Pripyat and the Reactor 4 power plant are located. This was my first stop of the day, and I was pleasantly surprised to find several hotels in the area, which are great places to stop off for all you thrill-seeking adventurers. But it just so happened to be the place where we decided to load up on some food, just before heading through the checkpoint to Reactor 4. And don't worry, the food was radiation free, or so I was told. To tackle the ridiculous issue of the site spewing non-stop radiation, a 35,000-ton steel confinement was erected over Reactor 4. According to the official figures, after its installation, radiation near the plant dropped to just 1/10 of the previous levels. The structure was designed to contain the radioactive debris for 100 years, but after that time they will have to think of a new way to contain the outrageous levels of radiation. From here we then drove straight up north to the small town of Pripyat, which was my favourite part of the trip. Throughout the tour we also stopped multiple times at various radiation hotspots and points of interest. We were given personal Geiger counters for our trip, which helped us gauge the levels of radiation we were being exposed to in the area. And just so you know, anything above 4 microsieverts is considered a big red flag, which I guess isn't a lot considering it's 1 billion times less than the amount pumped out at Reactor 4 immediately after the explosion. It's funny because during one of our stops we got swarmed by a pack of friendly wild dogs when one guy in our group decided to open a packet of crisps. Now I understand why they don't allow you to bring food into the site. We then explored several significant buildings, including a supermarket, which is where I stumbled across a very strange and very radioactive manhole.
Machine which were used for cleaning up the roof of fourth reactor. And yeah, just how the liquidator decided, why don't I try to bring this thing somewhere else? For example, in the middle of a Pripyat town. And yeah, since then this thing is laid in here. Just for fun.
So yeah, that probably wasn't the best thing to be putting my hand near. Whilst exploring the surrounding area, we stumbled across endless amounts of former Soviet propaganda, which was incredibly interesting as some of it was very well preserved. My next stop was the iconic Amusement Park. The Chernobyl Amusement Park, or Park of Culture and Rest, as it was officially titled, was never used by the residents of the city, as it was due to open on the 1st of May 1986, which was 5 days after the incident. The park contains a large iconic Ferris wheel, bumper cars, a parachute ride, a shooting range and more. These rides now sit rusting as grass and shrubs grow through the cracked concrete floor. Many areas of the amusement park are considered to have high levels of radiation. This is because the helicopters which took away the radioactive soil used the park as a landing ground. The residual soil was then washed into the ground. As with elsewhere in Pripyat, it means that the moss in the park can be highly radioactive, so avoid going anywhere near the moss. But that being said, provided you do follow the advice from your guide and take precautions such as not touching anything at all, you should be fine. We've made it into the town of Pripyat. We've got round to the amusement park. We've just walked past the bumper cars and the carousel, the Ferris wheel. And wow, it's so creepy. I can't even begin to fathom what these people went through in this town. They were told by the government people above that they'd be back in 3 days. Little did they know they wouldn't be coming back for years later. It's such a shame when you're actually here. It's one thing reading and seeing about it, but when you're here in person, you see the abandonment and the decay of the buildings. It's mind-blowing, it really is. A short distance away from the Ferris wheel, we found the Avahad Stadium. The stadium was intended to be the home ground of Pripyat's very own football team. However, due to the disaster, it never had the chance to show its true colours. Pripyat is also home to several schools, with 15 of them being nurseries, which catered to over 5,000 children. Today, visiting the nurseries gives a feeling of sadness and lost childhood on the one hand, and creepiness on the other. Tiny shoes, little beds, lots of toys and lots of books. All of these objects were supposed to bring happiness, but the accident and the evacuation painted them all black. It wasn't the sight of the objects, however. They are exactly what you'd expect to find, but it was the images that they conjure in your mind that struck me. Thousands of children exposed to the deadly radiation just before permanently being evacuated must have had a detrimental effect on them, psychologically, if not physically. So I've just been walking through the nursery where all the children went to school. Wow, it's heartbreaking, considering a lot of the population in Pripyat was children and people of a young age, knowing that they still came to school for 5 days after the disaster. It's just, it's terrible what happened, terrible. Something that I was very gutted about was not being able to go inside the main Azura swimming pool, which is such an iconic spot. As of the last few years, a lot of the buildings were deemed unsafe to enter due to the significant erosion of the foundations. I guess it's not really worth the risk. But that being said, it depends on who's around. Some guides are known to turn a blind eye if you do feel the need to wander. Our final stop of the day was one of my favourites, the Duga radar. Once a closely guarded secret, and now it's this immense structure which can be seen for miles around. From a distance it appears to be a gigantic wall, but on close inspection it's an enormous monolithic structure made up of hundreds of huge antennas and turbines. It's truly a surreal sight. Construction of the Duga began in 1972 when Soviet scientists looking for ways to mitigate long-range missile threats came up with the idea of building a huge over-the-horizon radar that would bounce signals off the ionosphere to peer over the Earth's curvature. But despite the gigantic scale of the project, it appeared that the scientists lacked full understanding of how the Earth's ionosphere works, resulting in unwitting failure before it was even built. A short distance from the radar there were two buildings which we were sneakily led inside, the first being the abandoned fire station, which contained a cool miniature model of Chernobyl. It was also super interesting to see the crazy artwork and murals painted on the inside. And the second being a large 5-storey apartment which was absurdly creepy, but had some amazing things inside which I'll never forget, including a rotting grand piano on the top floor. Before leaving the exclusion zone, whilst passing through the checkpoint once more, we were made to walk through a very strange device which measured our absorbed radiation and basically ensured that we hadn't picked up too much radiation on our visit. It really got my heart racing waiting for the confirmation, as I honestly don't know what would happen if you did fail it. Overall, visiting Chernobyl was an incredibly eye-opening and interesting place to visit, and I can't recommend this place enough. Walking through the abandoned and deserted towns was just like looking back through time. And it's crazy to think that us humans aren't expected to repopulate the area, and it will not be safe for people to live in the exclusion zone for more than 24,000 years. But I'm extremely grateful that I had the chance to visit the site when I did, and it's definitely something that I will remember for the rest of my life. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe to my channel and ring the little bell if you would like to be notified of more of my upcoming videos and adventures. It would also mean the world to me if you could leave a thumbs up and a comment down below of what you thought of this amazing place. I shall see you all in the next video.